Good afternoon, and welcome to yet another episode of our Friday show. I'm Dave Kluge. I'm here with my co-host, Stephie Smalls. And once again, we've got another great guest on the docket coming at you today. Senior writer for The Athletic, which is the main place. But really, I feel like it would almost be easier to list the websites that you don't write for because you are just about everywhere. But Eric Moody is with us today. Eric, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you on Twitter? And if you got anything that you're working on right now, any other websites that you'd like to plug, we would love to hear about it.
No, sounds good. You appreciate that, Dave. Steffi, hey, it's good to finally have a chance to chat with both of you. Like I said earlier, hey, the alert popped up. We got our Friday show coming up. Started getting excited, sent that tweet out with the Ultimate Warrior running down to the ring. Hey, I'm fired up. But to your point, Dave, hey, I am at a lot of places, over at The Athletic, 4 for 4. Also, write my own newsletter on Substack, Moody Fantasy Facts. So again, all over the place. One thing I am writing or finishing up that's in editing right now that I'm excited about, heading up to the draft. It'll be at 4 for 4. It's Dynasty players that you should trade away prior to the draft. And so I identify like 10 candidates, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver, even a tight end, that if they're on your Dynasty roster, you should highly consider moving them right now to maximize value.
That's a great idea. And, I don't want to steal your thunder here. I'll absolutely read the article, but you want to give us a sneak peek maybe on one player that you're trying to sell right now before the draft?
Yeah, I'll give you one. It's and Matt Ryan is one that immediately comes to mind. Kind of a perfect scenario because you look at Matt Ryan, his statistical body of work, per game basis, he's been solid, a high number of QB1 finishes. But when you think about the stage of career where he's at, not everyone is blessed with the super soldier serum like Tom Brady to play until you're 43. Matt Ryan's at the tail end of his career. And so, they're going to draft a quarterback, I believe. I know it's a big question. Who's the Falcons going to draft? And so I can easily see them getting a guy like Trey Lance to come in, sit behind Matt Ryan for a year or two. He can really thrive in that system because you think about this. They got Arthur Smith coming in. He loves to lean on the running game. I think a good system for Trey Lance would really involve like a lot of runs, a lot of play action passes. And plus he can sit there and learn from Matt Ryan and then take over the reins upon retirement. So that's just an example of like kind of one of the players that I reference, and then some of the dominoes that can fall that at least allow you to maximize, the subject player's value.
Yeah, I like that. This time of year is fun because there really isn't that much happening. I mean, obviously after the draft, we'll have a lot to talk about, but the free agency frenzy has kind of died down at this point. So the articles that you see coming out right now are very creative and different articles. And I really like that, guys to sell before the draft. And then obviously I'm here with Stephie Smalls, my co-host every single week. Stephie, I think everyone knows where they can find you on Twitter, but what do you have going on right now? Any new content that we should be on the lookout for?
Yes, of course. Well, I'm laughing at myself because I don't know why it says @Stephie Smalls in all caps. Like it's so obnoxious. Oh my gosh. So that's my handle. So my show Small Talk premiered. Is that the right word? Premiered,
yeah.
So look forward to those coming out. We changed the release date to Wednesdays, so they're going to start getting released on Wednesdays. I too am going to actually mention someone that I think you should sell right now. I've tweeted about it a little bit. It's going to be about Metcalf and why I think he needs to be sold right now. So a little bit spicier. I try to keep it exciting for everyone. So, but yeah, everything I'm doing is always on my Twitter. Tons of stuff going on. Excited about having Eric finally on. We've been, connecting for a while. So it's awesome to get you on our show, and excited for the guests that are coming on in the future.
Yeah. I actually like the idea of selling Metcalf. We don't talk a ton of, fantasy football here, but that is something that I can totally get behind. I checked just the other day in Fantasy Pros, their expert consensus ranking has him as wide receiver 3, right behind Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. And that is rich. That is pretty crazy for somebody. If you look at the second half of the season last year, in his last 8 games, his point per game average, he was the wide receiver 39 over that time. So all the talent in the world, but I don't know if I'd be reaching for somebody that early. But anyway, that's enough of the football talk. Now we're going to get to know Eric a little bit. For anybody that's seen this show before, we don't do deep dives on players or fantasy football. We're here to get to know the person behind the analyst. Eric, I'm not sure if you tuned in last week, but we did have your associate, Jake Seeley, over at The Athletic on here. Had an absolute blast getting to know him, and we are going to do the same with you today. So first of all, Eric, congratulations on heading into year 3 at The Atlantic, right? This is going to be, or I'm sorry, The Athletic. This is going to be your 3rd year writing for them. So
Absolutely.
Congratulations. They're an amazing site. And I will just say right now that, I don't usually advocate for paid sites because there's so much content out there. But The Athletic is a few bucks a month, and the staff that they have over there is worth every single penny. It's the one website that I don't care about paying for. So if you don't already have an Athletic subscription, go out and get that right now. But anyway, you had quite a career before you moved to The Athletic. I saw that you had actually published over 300 articles before you moved over there. So I'm wondering, did they reach out to you? Like, was it like a headhunting sort of thing where somebody was like, we need to get this guy that's just pumping content out? Or did you apply and end up with a position there?
It's kind of a funny story because my whole mindset is I would just say if it's something that you're looking for or that you would like to do is just to be proactive and just reach out, whether it's like a call, if you got a phone number, or an email or something like that. So for me, it was an email because I remember like years ago when the Athletic launched and I was able to I was like looking at this plethora of talent that they assembled, like Jake Seeley, it was all these different analysts. And I'm just like, that's a great fantasy team. Plus they have all the beat writer content and other podcasts and things like you mentioned. And so I just reached out. I actually reached out to, to Nando and, just said, hey, I know you guys have assembled a great team. If you have like any openings down the road, hey, please keep me in mind. And so what ended up happening, like years later, he reached out because I was writing at Fantasy Data, a few other places. Like you said, I'm everywhere most likely. And, he reached out to me and said that, hey, I've got we have a spot that's open. I'd love to talk to you on the phone, about The Athletic and just to see if we can mesh together. And then, hey, the rest is history, just to bring all that together. That story. Awesome. So that's really it.
Yeah. And honestly, that is a huge thing. You talk about it. The fantasy writers and producers that are over there are great, but the beat reporters over there are awesome as well. And, I work at the Fantasy Pros news desk where we're not breaking stories. I don't have an ear inside the Denver Broncos locker room or anything like that. But, that big story about Russell Wilson that just came out with the Rift of Power there, that was an exclusive from The Athletic. And I saw that, before Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport or anyone was talking about it on Twitter. I saw it that morning on The Athletic, read the whole thing, and it's just great work that you guys are doing over there. Yeah. So one question I do have for you is you are in a pretty, small group of people that actually have some background playing football at a high level. I feel like a lot of the guys that are out here say that they played the game and really, they gave up after Pop Warner, but you actually played in college at Nicholls State. I knew Steph was going to get a laugh out of that.
Wow. Pop Warner.
Hey, it's all right. It's all right. I'm just I'm firing shots at myself on that one, so it's okay. A little self-deprecation. But I want to ask you, because you are, I believe, the first guest we've ever had on here that has made it past the Pop Warner level. So what advantages do you think playing at a high level gives you as an analyst?
Yeah, I would say that. I'm like, here's the bottom line. I'm like, if you know football, I'm like, you know football. You don't necessarily have to put on the pads and get knocked around or get tackled to understand the game. It's just I've just always been passionate about it. And I played offensive line, at Nicholls State, for a couple of years, and so I think probably the advantage that it gives me is that I just think that a lot of analysis out there doesn't really focus like on the offensive line and the impact that offensive line play has, like not only on the quarterback, wide receivers, obviously the running game, but then also like with the effect that the defensive line has too. I know we talk about, IDP and different things like that, but it's just the offensive line is really the engine that really keeps the offense going. And I would say too, the smartest individuals on the field. So you have to know what everybody is doing on every single offensive play. And so really with my analysis, like I just like to start with the offensive line and kind of work my way out. Not every running back is athletically gifted like Saquon Barkley or, Todd Gurley in his prime or any of these other running backs. And so the reality is that they can't always transcend poor offensive line play. But I think we've all seen, like, if a running back, has a really good offensive line on what they're capable of. We've seen some masterful seasons over the years. And I think offensive line plays a big part in that. And the offensive linemen really don't get as much credit as I feel like they deserve. So I would say that's kind of the angle that I come from with having played the game.
Yeah,
That
I couldn't
is
agree more. I'm
lovely.
gonna let Steffi take this one.
This is like my love language. Like, I feel like people that have any kind of love interest in me, like, if you want to know my love language, it's just go back, record this, and this is exactly my love language. Like it starts in the trenches and it ends in the trenches, right? Like, the O-line matters. If the O-line sucks, that's it. It's done. The team sucks. Don't even talk to me. Like, it doesn't matter. So I love that. And that's where I start my own personal analysis. And, like, I can't imagine actually being a player and knowing it from the inside out. But I mean, the O-line matters so much for so many positions, especially for us fantasy analysts. Like, you can't evaluate skilled players without looking at an O-line. So I feel like that's where I've had my own personal success in fantasy football, is that the things I look at the most are the O-line and the D-line. Like, that's where you figure it out. You figure out how well a player is going to do fending themselves against these O-lines. And I mean, being a Giants fan, obviously I know how bad it is when you have a bad O-line.
She knows about the O-line woes. But Steffi, you brought up a really good point, because, like, on the quarterback side of things, I know we always look at a lot of stats about, how does a quarterback perform, like, under pressure and all those different things, which helps. But it's just kind of one thing. Like, if I'm like a left tackle and I'm blocking and I get beat and the quarterback gets hit, like, on the blind side, it's still going to be that reminder in his brain, and I don't care who the quarterback is, that, hey, I'm getting hit. And it kind of changes the mental dynamic of the game, for not only the quarterback, but also for, like, the offense. Again, it's tough to quantify, but to your point, Steffi, and what I was saying, hey, it matters so much. Both sides of the ball, O-line, D-line. So.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And when Le'Veon Bell left Pittsburgh and went to New York, I was completely out on it, because when you watch Le'Veon Bell play, he had patience. Everyone said, his biggest strength as a runner is his patience. And I said, well, that must be really nice, because there's 31 other starting running backs in the league that don't get the benefit of being able to be patient.
No.
You'd see him sit back there, wait for those huge holes to open up, and then he would hit them. And that's where he got his points. So what I'm getting at is Kalen Ballage might be kind of a sneaky play if they end up not drafting somebody this year. We'll see how that works out. But another question, kind of going off of that, I feel like most ex-players, and there aren't a whole lot of ex-players that are in the fantasy space, but whether it be just football analysts, fantasy, whatever it is, they typically have a very film-forward approach to their analysis. But after college, you got into finance, and that really shaped your process as more of a numbers-forward analyst. So how do you think that you're able to have this healthy balance between the two, evaluating film and evaluating numbers? But how do you kind of blend those two together?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Love it. I look at it this way. So, I've worked in the financial services industry, my entire career, as a, financial advisor, all the way up into like management positions. And so I look at it this way: two types of investment analysis out there. You've got fundamental analysis and you got technical analysis. Fundamental analysis, everyone's like, hey, XYZ company, that company's great, man. Look at their balance sheet. Look at this. You should buy it. Yeah. Okay, that's fine and dandy. But you got on the other side of the ledger, you got a technical analysis that's looking at things like relative strength, moving averages, different types of charts to figure out when's a good time to purchase that stock, when's a good time to sell it. And so the reality is, in order to be a good investment analyst, you have to play the piano with both hands. And so really what that mindset is kind of what I bring to fantasy football, because I'm like, hey, we're all on Twitter. We all have the conversations. It's like, the guys, pounding their chests for film. I'm like, you're very vocal. You got the analytics side, and everyone's kind of battling back and forth. I look at it this way: play the piano with both hands, because there's value on both sides. All the pro football focus stats, sports info solutions, but you can also watch the film. Here's the deal to kind of bring all those points together: is that the film shows you what a player can do athletically, what he is capable of. The stats kind of tell you like another tale, just to give you additional insight, like into the player, like on like yards after contact and like for a running back, and they were talking about offensive line play. So like yards after contact, how many breakaway runs and things that they have. Offensive line obviously plays a part in that, but you can kind of see what happened to get those results from the film. But the stats are also very useful too. It's just, I just wish both groups could get along. But
well, I think there's also a third group that a lot of people don't really want to admit exists, but there's a lot of intuition in this game as well, that you watch the games and you can kind of get a hunch for how things are going to happen. And then you can kind of warp the numbers to say what you want. And I'm not saying that that's the right way to do it, but that is a way to do it. So I feel like you can kind of make the case for or against any other player because of the plethora of analytics and information that's out there nowadays. So what are a few statistics that you specifically prefer? Like when you're looking at numbers, what are some of the numbers that you really like to focus on, so you're not just cherry picking the ones that tell the story you want to tell?
Yeah, and it's not overly, complicated. I would say, like, if you're looking at like quarterbacks, like for instance, I'm concerned about, like how many passing yards that they have per game. I'm like, you can't really look at like attempts because game flow, can dictate that. Also, just like to know, what their true passer rating is. That's another one that I like to look at. Also, like how many deep yards have they thrown? I know we like to look at like arm strength and say this quarterback's got a rocket arm and all this kind of thing. It's like, you don't need to have the most elite arm to be successful in the NFL. I think we've seen that, but I do want to know, how many deep pass attempts, do they have? Like for running backs, I love yards after contact because the reality is you're not going to always have perfect offensive line play. And I just need to know if this guy gets hit in the backfield by a linebacker or a defensive line or even like a corner or a safety. It's like, is this running back still going to be able to generate yards, or is this running back going to, fall on the ground like if they get breathed on? So, I like to look at that, and also like to see how many explosive runs or breakaway runs that they have. So wide receiver, yards per out run, is king. Pro Football Focus, came up with that metric. It is really, really good. Targets per game, receiving yards per game. So those are some of the metrics and things that I like to look at.
And I think that's, I really like the explosive plays. That's something that I like to focus on as well. And how do you know how PFF quantifies that? I believe it's 15 yards or more is what they do. And a lot of guys aren't able to do that. And I think that's definitely one that's worth really, really taking a look at. So anyway, I just saw my buddy FF Chef, James Crease, pop up in the comments here. Good friend of mine. What's up, Chef? But that brings me to another question. I've heard that you're quite the cook. So let's hear a little bit about that. What is your favorite meal to cook? You have a recipe that you want to share with the audience?
Sure, absolutely. And one other thing too, it's going back to the first question about kind of with the athletic and kind of getting on there. I want to add some more context to that as far as like for those that are still grinding out there trying to get on the radar. We'll come back to that. So just put a bookmark in it. So as far as cooking, like I love cooking, and I know it's probably going to look bad because like, oh, it's the next offensive lineman. Of course he likes to cook. It's not the point, but it's I really love it. Like, it's a passion of mine. I'm surprised I didn't actually go to college to culinary to become like a chef. I love it that much. So I like to cook a lot of different things, and it's not the stereotypical, male answer, well, barbecue and smoked meats. I like to do that too. It's not that. So like, I like to cook a lot of things like Italian food, chicken Parmesan, veal Parmesan, for Italian, Mexican food, hey, I'm not the biggest queso fan. I know I had a tweet about that got way more attention than I would like, but I can make queso because my wife loves queso. Tacos, like pork tacos, a lot of really exotic type things, but I will give you a recipe. I call it, we can have a cook-off in it. It's funny. It's called, I call it like Mississippi pot roast. So Ooh. Picture this, you get your crock pot, you get a roast, chuck roast. You put a stick of butter in there, you cut it up, kind of spread it around. You put some ranch seasoning, the dressing seasoning on there, not the liquid. So the seasoning, the powder, you put that on there. You put some au jus gravy powder on there. Then you put some pepperoncini peppers on top.
Whoa. Okay, now we're getting, sounds good.
All right. You put the lid on the crock pot. Put the crock pot on low, let it cook for 8 hours, and enjoy the smells in your home along the way. Tastes phenomenal. You can add that. You can boil like some red potatoes, put some butter, salt, and pepper in those, mash them up. I'm not a big fan of adding milk to the mashed potatoes, make some fresh green beans, some other vegetables. Great.
So
Yeah,
I add sour cream to my mashed potatoes.
Mhm.
Like I don't do the milk thing, but I add a little bit of sour cream. Just you don't like it, okay?
I don't like milk. Yeah, so I'm good with sour cream. That's good.
I don't know why I asked you that question. I had a really busy morning and I skipped over lunch, and then I decided to ask you about good food. And I don't know if I don't know if my mic picked up my stomach rumbling there, but that was not the smartest question for me to ask. It's kind of funny though that you mentioned the whole smoked meats thing. I feel like in the summer, FF Twitter just turns to like smoked meats Twitter. It's like that's all everybody does in this industry in their free time is smoked meats.
I got one more for you. You made me think about the smoked meats and people sending all the pictures. I'm like, I'm gonna send a picture, but it's not always gonna be like smoked meats. Okay, so I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood, like in Alabama. I had neighbors that were from like the Middle East. I had neighbors that were Japanese, and so all it's like a big melting pot. And so this one recipe that my one of my neighbors gave me, it's called Senili. So I'm sorry, Dave, I apologize. So you get some ground beef, right? Season it with salt and pepper, stir it together or squish it together really, really well. Mm-hmm. Cut up some parsley, cut it up as fine as you can. Mix the parsley in the ground beef. Okay. Mix it together. Cut up some onions, cut up some tomatoes, and cut up some potatoes. So you layer the potatoes next. Then you do the tomatoes. Then you do the onions. You put this in a pan, preferably one with the lid that can close. Put it in the oven. Let it cook on 350 for about 2.5 to 3 hours. Again, so great. Get some pita bread with that. Thank me on Twitter later.
Pita bread? Whoa. Now things. Okay, Dave, we might have to do I think we're creating a segment right now. I think that we need to get our guests to give us their best recipes. Like, I think, and we're going to call it like the Moody part or something. Like, this is an evolving, like, this is awesome. Now I know what I'm cooking this week. How cool is that?
There you go.
Let's just, my stomach is going to start directing this show. Let's just go with it. Steph, what's your go-to recipe, Steph? Let's hear it.
So I make the best chicken cutlets ever in America. Like, no one. Cutlets? Yeah, my chicken cutlets are unmatched. Like, I promise you, they're better than everyone's. The key is to make sure that I put mustard with the egg before I what is it called?
All
Dredging? Right. Dreading? I don't know with what the proper term is. But I put mustard with my egg for the wet part of that scenario. And I'm telling you, it's perfect. But you have to have the skillet hot. If the skillet isn't hot when you put the cutlets in, you're done. You just ruined them. You ruined a whole batch of cutlets. So it has to be hot. It has to be sizzling. You have to see the oil is ready to go. So yeah, that's that. My chicken cutlets are just absolutely unmatched.
Yeah, once we get off this show, I'm going to share my Brussels sprout recipe because my wife taught me how to make these. They're the best Brussels sprouts in the world, and I hate it. I feel bad for Brussels sprouts. They're just misunderstood. If you prepare them correctly, they are the best vegetable out there. So I'm going to share that a little bit later. But luckily, we still got Chef in the chat here because I think he just came up with the name for your segment, Eric. In the moody for some foodie. I mean, just absolutely crushed it. So we will. I think you got to run with that at this point. Last week we had Jake on, and we came up with Jake's takes. This week we got you on. We're coming up with in the moody for some foodie. That's what we're doing here. Is we're just helping you come up with other ideas. And thank you, Jeremy, for agreeing with me. Brussels sprouts are absolutely fire. Now, something else when I was, we're going to get off the food topic because I'm clearly very hungry, but let's get off the food topic. Something else that caught my eye was that you listen to metal music. Just the other day, I saw you tweet something about Megadeth, which I have not seen a lot of overlap between the metalhead community and the fantasy football community, but I'm glad that I found out that there is one other metalhead in the community here, Eric. Mm-hmm. But something that I know about metalheads is that most of them played music. People that don't have the ear for music don't like metal music. It just sounds like loud chaos, whatever. But the people that have actually invested time in learning to play an instrument, they're able to kind of enjoy it a little bit better. So I'm just going to ask you, because I assume you've played something before. What instruments do you play?
Yeah, I've got a bass guitar. I think you may be able to see it on camera. It's right back there. So
I can. Yeah.
So no, I play bass guitar. I've played now for 23 years, somewhere in there. So now I love metal, hard rock, jazz, blues. I would say my favorite band of all time is Led Zeppelin. favorite kind of artist, musician, David Bowie is up there as well. I know Denny and I are always tweeting each other about David Bowie things. So it's a whole another story. Like Scott Fishbowl.
Yep. Fish bites. Everybody. I love it. We're just going to start a whole cooking show this off season. We're gonna be inviting people on for some online cooking.
No, I love it. But yeah, I'm definitely a metalhead. So it just I just always enjoyed the genre, but it does surprise like a lot of people because it's growing up. It's it was always like, 'cause I didn't really listen to a lot of rap or like R&B. I just always kind of gravitated towards like to rock music. I do like some R&B and rap artists, but metal, hard rock has always been my thing. So I've played in a lot of bands. Like I mentioned, we were talking DMing each other on Twitter. Played in a lot of bands. Not playing in one now. It's just with the family and things. It'd be the worst bandmates ever. But played in a lot of bands like in college and then getting out of college, especially being in that New Orleans area. And like I told you before, I even did had one project where I was doing lead vocals, which I was very excited about. Blues trio. We were doing Cream songs, a lot of the old kind of British blues flavored kind of rock. And so that was great. Sunshine of Your Love, White Room, a lot of songs, good stuff.
I love that. Yeah, that's especially being near New Orleans. I went there just a few years ago, and you hear it all the time, but it really is unbelievable. Like when you're walking down the street, almost every single bar has a stage and live music going in there, and you can be in one where they're playing jazz, and then you bounce next door and they're playing blues, and you bounce to the next one and they're playing metal. I mean, that city is just on fire with music 24/7. So if you're into it, that's definitely where you want to be.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so now, sorry, not to interrupt, but all I can think about is beignets now, because like I feel like we're talking about food, and like then we're talking about New Orleans, and all I can think about is beignets. That's all. I just have to make a comment because now I'm hungry.
Cafe Du Monde.
Yeah, I actually and I haven't been able to find it out here, but when I was in Chicago, there was a grocery store that would sell the Cafe Du Monde, the chicory coffee, and I loved it. And anytime somebody would come over and I'd offer them a cup of coffee and they didn't know any better, I'd give them some chicory coffee. And it's definitely an acquired taste, but I had some people spit coffee out in my kitchen, not knowing what they were really getting into with it before. So something else I wanted to talk to you about is I saw that you just started writing for basketball again this year, right? Or is that something that you've been doing for a little while? So that's something that I'm doing right now. I'm doing NBA and I'm doing NFL. Last year I was doing NBA, NFL, and MLB. Took MLB off my plate. Thought that would be enough. Now I'm still realizing that doing two sports is a big headache in itself. So what advice would you have for somebody that's interested in trying to cover multiple sports as a fantasy analyst?
Yeah, it is daunting. I would just say just kind of divide like and conquer. You just really map out like what you want your content to be, and just time block in order to get it done. Like to your point, Dave, like I write a column over at Rotoballer, NBA, a DFS column. So I know like, hey, every Sunday, every Monday, I've got to get that column in on time. And so it's just with kind of doing some pre-planning, having your processes in place, I can put it together, very quickly. I just have a model, that I follow that kind of helps me identify like which players I want to target, like in my NBA DFS lineups. So that obviously helps. So just being organized, kind of having your processes in place. But I would say another thing is really just to be like realistic. You can't go into the week saying, I'm going to publish 6 articles this week. 6. I'm like, it's possible, but it just depends on kind of what things you have going on. Some may work a day job or have other responsibilities. So it's just really having realistic expectations. It can be done, and just know that you're not going to be able to cover like everything. You're not going to be able to cover like all the breaking news or put a video out or something out like on every single news item that breaks. You just have to be really selective on what you want to cover and what you want to accomplish during that specified time frame. And it's crazy because you still got a lot of NBA activity obviously going on right now, regular season, but then you've got a lot of off-season NFL stuff, and it never stops because they're a marketing machine. It's always something to talk about, right? You got free agency, you got the draft coming up. So I just think finding that balance has probably worked out best for me. So hopefully that helps.
No, and yeah, that's something that I realized, when NFL was the last sport I got into as an analyst. I started with NBA because that's what Fantasy Pros brought me on as, and then they gave me an opportunity with MLB, and I did that. And then once I got into NFL, I was like, well, I think I could kind of balance all of this. And then realized, wait, no, this isn't a 17-week season. This is a 52-week NFL season, because they make sure that there is always something to talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, and so taking things a little bit more seriously than just the normal banter is, diversity is something in fantasy sports that now you're seeing people of color, women like myself, like you, that are, on this come up and have been part of the industry for a while. What is your advice to our community on how we can make it more inclusive? Because we're not quite there, right? I think that we've made it pretty far, and I think it's awesome, but there's still leaps and bounds to be made.
Yeah, no, really good point. It's I'm just thinking for me when getting in, I just always felt like I wanted to have as much high quality content out there as I could, because your body of work kind of speaks for itself. I'm like, if they Google, your name, Dave, Stephie, or mine, it's like some of your content's going to pop up. So I just want them to be able to look at that and say, okay, hey, this person's sharp, really good things, that are out there. But I'll just say the biggest thing is really just to be yourself, and don't think you have to fit in any kind of like a box in order to make it. And I think it's been really refreshing to see, to see a lot more of that, like recently, where everyone can just kind of, be themselves and not say, well, I need to emulate, my favorite analyst, or be just like this person, or be like this one, in order to kind of get a seat at the table. And it's really been more kind of inviting and open for people who, come as you are, just like Nirvana said, and just be yourself. And so for me, kind of coming in, it's, I just always approached it with a kind of like with that kind of corporate like mindset, is for where I want to create as much content like as possible, so they can know, for one, hey, this individual is like dependable. This individual can hit deadlines, and also is coachable. And what I mean by that is more so like, if you got like a really good editor, and they're giving you like feedback on things that you can change or enhance, like your article, don't have it go in one ear and out the other. Just be very open to the feedback. And sometimes the feedback hurts. It's things you put out there that suck. It's just like, that's a terrible idea. That's not good. Here's some things that you can do to tweak it. And that's okay. Just take the feedback, implement it, and you'll be better for it. And so that's just the feedback, that I would add. But just come as you are. I'm like, who I am. This is me, Saints fan. Music guy. Hey, love metal. Hey, proud of it. Ex-offensive lineman. So just really embracing those things. Just be yourself. Good things will happen.
No, and not even to interrupt you. I think like the biggest part of it, and I've said this on a couple shows before, is like to be open-minded, right? Like to change the narrative that like we're all raised a certain way, and that's okay, and that's not your fault as like a child that you were in the environment that you were, or whatever. But like to be open-minded to everyone, and to enter every situation. My dog is barking because obviously my new mic is here, and I don't. It's okay. I was so hoping it was coming for this, but no, really, like I think it's just being open-minded and being a caring, gracious, kind human being, and you can bring that into football. It doesn't have to be something that just because maybe a certain way that you were raised. You just need to change the narrative in your head and take a step back. The way you may have felt because, again, like you were raised a certain way, is you can just take a step back, think to yourself, like, why am I feeling this way? Do I need to think this way? Like, what is like the way to go about this in an open-minded sense, and to be accepting of other people, not even beings. It sounds like aliens, but
now, I'll add to that, because that's a huge, because it's it's just funny where you like observe things, where the things that people say, like on social media, the things that people do, it's just, just like to your point, treat everyone the way, that you would want to be treated. It's just like, would you say, something like that to someone on the street? If they met, if you met them, it's like, you always have like the Twitter, tough people, it's just like where I'm going to act all like big and tough. And I'm sure those people in real life, wouldn't be, acting that way. And so just even with you, Stephie, with some of the stuff that I'm like, you've dealt with like online, and then other, female content creators, I'm just like, it's just, hey, enough's enough with that kind of stuff. But I just approach it that way. Just treat everyone the way that you want to be treated. Because here's something else, another rule that ties in directly with what you said. It's really like, do you want something out there that someone can reference, that you did? Think about, is it like, is it colleagues, like at your, at your day job, or just others like in the industry that, if you're trying to, network and do some things, do you want them to see those things? Because once they're out there, they're out there. You can delete it. People can screenshot it. Ain't going away, right? It's just like it's there. So just stuff like that is just have a little bit more common sense. To your point, Stephie, hey, be open. Everyone's different. Everyone's not going to be the same as you. Everyone has different interests. Just be open-minded. So
right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
No, absolutely. And I think that's something that I learned like applying to med school. And it's so funny because this is how Stephie Smalls came about, right? Smalls is not my last name. If you have not caught on to that already, this is a play on Biggie Smalls, who is like one of my favorite artists ever. But like applying to med school, and why I changed my Twitter handle was to, protect like my identity and whatever I'm saying on the internet, because we all know I can be a little bit reckless. But really, like I learned that you have to remember that everything, you can find anything you've ever said on the internet. So you need to think like, so when I tweet, and this is something Dave is definitely I will applaud him that he's definitely helped me with this, is like, just think about it. Like, is this something that you want to show up again, like in 2 years, in 2 months, in 2 weeks? Like, so you have to think through like the actions that you're making and the tweets that you're making, because right now it may seem awesome and it may seem cool and it might seem like something that's going to get a lot of clicks, but is it something that you're proud of tomorrow? Or is it something that's not going to settle very well? And I think a lot of people struggle with that on the app. Is it's very, very easy to say whatever you want, especially on Twitter. I think that Twitter is a different platform, more than Facebook, than Instagram, than all these other platforms. Is Twitter is just quite literally your thoughts. And it can get dangerous that way. I think that there is a way to fall into some trouble, like a little bit of a black hole, because it's very easy to say whatever you're thinking. So I think being very cautious about the actions you're doing, what you're saying, is very important.
Exactly. Every time before I hit tweet, I kind of run this through my mind. I just imagine, I say, Matthew Berry's going to look at this. Joe Bryant's going to look at this. My grandma, who's not even on Twitter, might somehow come across this. And that's what I try to say every single time I tweet something out. Like, is this something that if anybody came across would come back to embarrass me at some point? And that's just kind of my rule of thumb when I'm on Twitter. I don't want to do anything that can, just rub people the wrong way. But, we kind of bounced around all over the place. But Steph, that was a fantastic question. And thank you for asking that. And I think that was the longest I've ever gone on this show without talking, because I just want to sit back and listen. It's not my place to, interject myself into that conversation. It's my job to sit here and listen and learn. So thank you for talking about that.
Of course, Steve,
So let's get to something a little bit kind of on the same page, but you've been in the Twitterverse for quite some time now. You've been with The Athletic for a while, but you were writing before then. So since we're still talking about Twitter, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen over the last few years? Because Steph and I are both relatively new. So, we know what we've seen over the last, less than a year, but for somebody that's been plugged in for a little bit longer, what are the shifts that you've seen?
Yeah, again, another solid question. I would just say it's I guess people are being, it's not a bad thing, being just more transparent, about their thoughts, beliefs, how they're feeling. It's not just as it was many moons ago, where people sending or tweeting out really unique like stats and things like on players. It's really been a lot more personality like injected in, about kind of how things are going, like personally, family, football, of course, a lot more video content, that's really taken on. Which is good to see. It's always good to kind of connect the dots with someone's voice, in their face. So I would say those have probably been the biggest changes, that I've noticed. Just the thing that really got me into Twitter was really just responding to just a lot of start-sit questions.
Yeah,
that was kind of like my thing. I was like, you got some of the bigger names, when I joined Twitter, that obviously don't have time to respond to like 500, questions. Should I start, John Doe or Robert Doe? Those types of questions. And so really just answering people's questions and making myself available was kind of my thing, like early on. I would still tweet stats, and things out, but that was kind of felt like my way in. So I think that's probably been the biggest shifts, that I've noticed. It's great, a lot more video content and just really a lot more personality built in. Like your Twitter account doesn't have to be about football like 24/7. You know, I can inject, you know, like the things like heavy metal in, I like metal, you know, I like bass, you know, pictures of my kids, you know, things that we're doing, you know, my wife, that kind of stuff. So it's good to feel more comfortable weaving those things in, to not necessarily turn off, you know, some of my followers. So
Yeah.
hopefully
That was my biggest fear when I was brand new on Twitter. I
Mhm.
was like, everything needs to be like 100% content
Yes.
driven and nothing
Mhm.
else. And that was what I did for a while. And I was like, why am I not getting any followers? And then I just started,
Mhm.
sharing pictures of my wife and I doing what we like to do,
Mhm.
which is climb mountains. And I started
Mhm.
cracking stupid jokes and showing everyone what a weird, odd sense of humor I have. And that's when people started to connect with me. And I felt like I started to kind of gain this following. But as for
Mhm.
responding to start sit questions and just, engaging with the followers,
Mhm.
people don't realize the importance of that. Like if somebody's following you, it's because they are interested in you and they want to engage with you. So if somebody's
Mhm.
going to follow you and they're going to ask you a question, it takes 10 seconds to respond to somebody's tweet. If somebody says,
Yes.
should I start Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool this week? You've got your rankings. You know what it's going to be. Just take the 10 seconds out of your day, respond to that
Mhm.
person, and just, nurture that engagement, because that's what really makes Twitter a special place, especially in this
Mhm.
industry.
Exactly. Yeah. Good point.
No, absolutely. And I feel like that's a big thing. And, I did tweet this week, like, my favorite part of this app is the engagements, is the networking, is like interacting with my followers. Like,
Mhm.
you don't get to where you are without these people. And then to be like all prissy and think that your poo don't stink is not like the way to go about it, right? I mean, like,
Mhm.
these are people that have supported you from day one, since day 10, since day 300 and whatever it is. And like
Mhm.
to not respond, like, and yes, you can't answer everything.
Mhm.
But I take a lot of pride in the fact that I do interact with my followers. And I think
Yeah.
that is one of the biggest things that can give you success in this industry. I think that, it makes you relatable. And it takes away that, there's this layer of, there's the big names and a lot of them do a really great job interacting, but to be able to be personable, for everyone to know that I drink White Claws and we can joke about White Claws and we can do this and we can do that, is they almost trust you a little bit more because you've opened up your life a little bit. And I know Nick was on, one of our first shows together,
Mhm.
and he really, like, it should feel uncomfortable to be sharing that stuff. And like,
Mhm.
it's not like you're sharing your deepest, darkest secret, but you're sharing part of
Mhm.
your life. And I think that makes you personal, that makes you someone that's trustworthy, because you're willing to connect with them on a different level, beyond football,
Mhm.
beyond fantasy football. And that's not something that everyone is capable of doing. And I think it's really clear who is able to make that connection with their followers.
Yeah. And the first time I reached out to you, Eric, you immediately
Yeah.
responded to you. And I was like,
Mhm.
this guy, he's a senior writer at The Athletic. He's got a check mark next to his name.
Mhm.
There's no way this guy's going to respond to me. And sure enough, you did. So thank you for that. You
Yeah.
really practice what you preach.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say it's it really had me thinking with what Steffi mentioned is I would just think is that, like, because like early on, it was kind of like the mindset of, for where, in order like to make it, I just need to outproduce like everyone. And I'm like a grinder. Everyone says that they interact with, for where it's I was thinking, okay, content after content after content will be good. It puts you like on the radar, but then I was able to connect the dots and like get some additional things, you need to do. And I know it's been a lot more of this in the industry lately, which is great, is really like with the networking thing. It's like, by grinding out content, you're building relationships, with those that you're working with, with editors, others on the staff. And then that kind of ties back to what you're saying. It's like, man, Moody, it's like it's not a website you haven't written for. It's for
Yeah.
where you just get to know people. It kind of happened like organically for me. I didn't really try to do networking. It's just like you're interacting with editors and others as you're writing for, all these different sites. But I think the things that we're seeing now, especially like I know it's a lot of conversation on Clubhouse, but just with the networking and the industry in general is huge, because, we get to have conversations like this where it's not necessarily about football. It's really about just kind of getting to know the person. So I think that's really been an eye opening for me over the last year, being able to see these things happen and just help people,
Yeah.
because that's the one thing I like to do. It's just like, was anything that I can help someone with, whether it's football related or not, I'm always open to doing it.
And I tell people that all the time, that creating content in itself is a form of networking. Like, you don't need to just DM somebody and try to start a conversation about something random. When you're reaching out and writing for these websites and you're doing shows with people, you're building those connections in the industry. So the advice that you're giving, and I'm sure you've rubbed elbows with this guy before, Chris Allen is somebody that I work with over at Football Guys, but he's a lot like you, where he just writes for all of these websites, and it's really helped him expand his reach in the industry, and it's helped him, become a very reputable writer, because he's with Football Guys and 4for4 and Number Fire and DLF and NBC, and he's just writing all over the place, and that in itself helps him foster these engagements. And it sounds like you have followed a very similar path, not trying to be anything you're not, just working your butt off until you get the respect that you deserve. So I love to hear that. So,
yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. It's I'll throw this in. Sorry, Dave. It's for where it's kind of one of those things. And Stephie, you mentioned this about, hey, everyone's, poop stinks. And it's just like, you mentioned the whole check mark thing. I was like, I was surprised. Like, when the thing popped up, I was like, been waiting for this for a while. I know I put in, but hey, I guess patience pays off. It happened, but it's like, I still have that mindset for where it's like, I'm like on day one, for where, I'm still out there. Like, I feel like I have something to kind of to prove, kind of like every day. I almost feel like it's kind of Tom Brady-esque, for where he always feels like he's got like that chip on his shoulder that, hey, this has not come easy for me. I'm going to go out there and grind and make it happen. Damn it. That kind of mindset. And so I kind of carry that with me like every day. It's for where I'm like, you still just have to keep grinding, keep getting better. And then I'm just trying not to get complacent, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think for any new content creator, I think that's key. It's like, never get comfortable. Because once you get comfortable, you stop getting better.
I couldn't agree more. And I have to have that conversation with myself often, where I will literally close my office door, put my headphones on, and I'm like, I am not leaving this chair. I'm not getting up for a bathroom break. I'm not doing anything until I'm done with this article. And you've got to really have that self-motivation, because it's very easy once you start, seeing your followers grow and getting opportunities. It's very easy to just get complacent in where you are. And really, if you're not growing, you're regressing. And that's kind of the way that I look at it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things too, just going off that, and like, just be yourself. Like, you don't need to put out your tight end one just because everyone else is putting out their tight end one, right? Like, there's weeks, and we see it a lot, like I was joking around with the rookies, like last week it's Kyle Pitts week. This week it's Wilson week. Like, every week we're getting a rookie that comes in and he's entering the conversation, and everyone's giving their opinions, and fan bases are fighting each other over it. And I think it's just being yourself. Like, you don't need to. You're not proving yourself to anyone. Like, you can just put out the content that you want to put out, like, excluding everyone else around you. So I think that's a big part of it too. And I think you see, if you start catching on to these trends and like, oh, everyone's putting out their tight end rankings and then you do too, that does not make you different. It just makes you the same as everyone else that week. So I think that's a big, it's a huge part of it too. And I think that's what makes you relevant and what makes you, makes people want to follow you, is because they don't know what they're going to get. They don't think that they're going to get another, RB top 5 ranking, Dynasty this, the fantasy redraft that. Like, so just be yourself. That's the best way to get people to want to come to your page.
So I feel like we already covered it, because we've had a lot of great advice that we've been sharing here and hearing from you, Eric. But I do like to wrap up the show, because, most of the people that we have on as our guests are people that have found a job with a respectable company. So if you had to just narrow it down to one single piece of advice for any content creators that are out there trying to make it, what would that piece of advice be from you, Eric?
I would say consistency is one that came to mind. It's just being able to deliver and just be consistent. Because if an editor's expecting something out of you, like this piece of content, like each week, it's just make sure it happens. And I think everyone makes sacrifices. You do, Dave, Stephie, you do, anyone that's listening does that, especially that's in the industry. It's like you make sacrifices to get things done. So I would just say to be consistent, just as consistent as you can.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. And we will go ahead and sign off on that. Before we do, Steph, one more time, if you want to let everybody know where they can find you and the new date that you'll be airing your show.
Yes. So you can find me on your timeline already because I am so annoying on Twitter. People keep mentioning to me this week, I'm getting it a lot where it's like, I thought I followed you because you're everywhere. Like they thought they followed me. Like I'm getting DMs. They're like, I'm so sorry. Like I thought I followed you back. Like you're all over my timeline. I just figured like I like your stuff. I didn't know. So I will be on your timeline. If you don't follow me, you will have to mute me to get rid of me. Yeah. So with FTN Network, my show Small Talk will now be coming out on Wednesdays. I'm very, very, very excited about it. This week is cool. Look out for why I think you should sell Metcalf.
I'm excited about that one. I am thrilled to see what your reasoning is because I feel like there are a lot of different angles that you can take on that one. And then Eric, one more time, if you want to let everyone know where they can find you on Twitter and what you've got coming up in the near future here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Eric N Moody. N as in Nicholas, my middle name. I think at Eric Moody was originally taken. I know it's a pilot, very popular pilot in the UK that saved a lot of people
Yes.
with his skills. That shares that name as well. But yeah, you can find me over at the Athletic, over at 4for4, and also at Rotoballer, and a lot of other places. Definitely check out the article about Dynasty players to trade away prior to the draft. I'll have some other content coming out at the Athletic, and also some newsletters that are coming out next week for Moody Fantasy Facts. So yeah, follow me on Twitter. Always happy to engage.
Yeah, you've got content coming out nonstop. So the best thing to do is just follow Eric on Twitter and you'll be able to see all of it. And then I am Dave Kluge. You can find me at DaveKluge_FF. Just dropped an article this morning, which is very on brand for me. It's about 0 wide receiver drafting, updated it with some data from 2020, and then also highlight some receivers that I think that you should be targeting in the 2021 season. Steph and I, of course, are going to be back next weekend. We've got NBC Sports Edges, Denny Carter, and we also haven't announced this yet, but we are going to have Cooter Doodle on as an extra guest. So we got 2 guests coming at you tomorrow, 2 of quite possibly the quirkiest people in all of fantasy football. It is going to be such a blast.
It does not get quirkier. Okay, you want the quirkiest of the quirky?
Jeff is up there. Together. Jeff Bell is up there. Yeah, I mean, Jeff's another quirky. But real quick, Cooter reaches out to me this morning, and she goes, "Hey, Dave, I've got an idea. Can you just sit down at your computer and just record a video just answering 2 questions? What was your favorite football play ever? And why are you a Bears fan?"
It was video.
So I just didn't know what she had going on, but I sat down, recorded a quick 2 minutes, sent it over to her, and go on my Twitter and find it for yourself. She is a comedic genius. Just the way that she edited this, she had a really fun time with it. So she's got videos coming out with Troy, Mike Fiala, and myself. Be sure to check those out. They are hilarious. But thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Dave Kluge.
And I'm Stephie Smalls.
And thank you for tuning in to our Friday show.